really appreciate the opportunity to speak here. It's actually, I was thinking about this quite a bit this morning, that, Mark just talked about CIMIC, and on my tour in Bosnia as a CIMIC operator, I was there at the same time as Alex Sang was. Alex was at the higher headquarters, but it's, I don't know, it's like Alex is kind of here in a way, and for me, in the entire time that I've been familiar with the USI, it's been Alex, right? So it's, I don't know, kind of bittersweet. I know Margaret's gone, but Margaret and I often bonded with when Alex was around. So, okay, my disclaimer. So everything here is based on my personal experience. I promise you that the room is full of people who know more than I do about all the technical details. We just saw, I was super impressed there. Mark brings up the training schedule from a course I was on 24 years ago. Wow, the memories come back with that, eh? So, and I remember that we did project management, and I remember that we did a really good negotiation and some alternate dispute resolution stuff. I did not recall that that was one 9-day course, and now I remember it at the Alberta Staff College and so forth. So it's just funny how I rely so much on others to carry my memories for me, I guess. My background here, I'm going to talk about in a moment. My background, first off, my thesis. What am I going to tell you? So the reason for the title of the presentation here is that I sort of have two different experiences. I was deployed to Bosnia 3 times over the course of a decade, and I really believe we did a lot of good there. It's hard to see it sort of in isolation. I'm going to talk about that a little bit. I think, James, you really addressed that nicely in your presentation. You don't necessarily see the change over 6 months. You see maybe one person makes a great comment, and you're like, that's life-changing, but you don't necessarily see the country change, but over the course of a decade, you get some of that. And I'm going to contrast that with a tour I did after that. I was in Haiti in 2004, and I actually think that the way that we did things in Haiti probably caused more harm than good. Really sort of an in-and-out type, Band-Aid type approach. So I'll leave it to you to judge. That's my belief. All right, so who am I? Well, I joined the Army. I love this picture on the left. That's the bunk space that I had in 97, if I remember correctly. I think my gunner took that over top of the wall that separated our rooms. And then the picture on the right was taken just about a month ago. Well, a few of you in the room here were on parade at Lighthorse Park, commemorating the 80th anniversary of the liberation of the Netherlands. I was at the same ceremony happening in the Bergen-op-Zoom Canadian War Cemetery. This has become a big part of my life. It was mentioned, Dave mentioned my intro briefly, but thought we can at least touch on that. Okay, so I have 4 operational tours. Op Cavalier 94, and then 2 rotations with Op Palladiums, that's all Bosnia, and then Op Halo in Haiti in 2004. So 94, we just had a little look at the AOR. That was super helpful. Sean had a ton of maps this morning. Really, the AOR was so small that when I Google Vesico on the map, that red dot covers the whole AOR. Good, that was it. It was really maybe 20 kilometers, maybe 25 kilometers north to south, and about the same east to west. I was deployed as a Cougar driver, and you can see the back ends of all the Cougars there. There's the proper side of the Cougar. So deployed driving that thing. It actually worked pretty well. It was a good vehicle to be on over there. I'm thankful that I never had to fight from the Cougar, because that would have been a disaster. It's not a fighting vehicle. It was not designed as a fighting vehicle. It was actually designed as a tank trainer. But we lucked out and never really, I had small arms here and there, but that was it. I deployed, I was 19 when I deployed. You'll see in some of the upcoming pictures here. So quite young, and I look young when I deployed. It's shocking now. I see this child ready to deploy. We did fantastic pre-training for this one, actually. Something that I want to just acknowledge here. We actually went to Camp Pendleton in California, because the weather here, we would have been training in the winter. So Colonel Losachuk took us down to Camp Pendleton, and we trained there for 3 weeks. We had great terrain, countryside that looked a lot like Bosnia, not the destroyed buildings, mind you, but there's my hero shot from early days. And the other thing that I want to just highlight out of this was that my return home. So I don't think he's in the room anymore. Young guy, right? See? But Dave, is Dave Mattis still in the room? Did Dave take off? All right, Dave asked the question this morning. I thought it was a good question about what we've learned in terms of people bringing people home. And on this, that was my gunner. I broke his nose, actually, and by accident. And my return home landed in Calgary, so it was with LDSH. So we landed in Calgary. I was a reservist. And basically, we got our DAG, so a couple hours of administrative, filled out all our paperwork and all that. And literally, my father and my brother picked me up at Curry Barracks and drove home. I didn't see a uniform again for 7 weeks. Nobody reached out to me to say, hey, Jay, how you doing? Nothing like that at all. It was really, and I know, George, you remember your guys coming home like that, right? I was lucky. I didn't have, you can judge for yourself, but, reasonably well adjusted or whatever. So this got better. This changed a lot over my time in uniform, and I know it's changed today. But just to point out that in those early days, there was nothing. And I know a couple of guys that I deployed with who came home who had real issues. There's at least one fellow I deployed with from my own regiment, another member of the South Albertas, and never seen or heard from him again. So, yeah. No idea where he is, nothing like that. All right, I went back in '97, and great opportunity. I was grateful for both deployments. '94 was formative. Young guy getting to do something like that, it was wonderful. '97 was, okay, I did it, let's go back. Went back again, I was a corporal this time, went back as a Cougar driver once again. And this time we had the larger AOR. So this time we were covering quite a bit more territory. Kind of peace had broken out then-ish. We had the Dayton Peace Accords. For that time, the entire time that I was there, actually, so 6 months in country, I heard one shot the whole time. And pretty sure it was a hunter, nothing more than that. So it was not, ranges and all that notwithstanding, but, sort of driving around on patrol, one time we heard a shot. So, which was a lot different from '94. Cougar was really good again here, covers a lot of ground, doesn't need a lot of maintenance, very little off-road time. The maintainers could sort of pull it into the garage, pull the engine and transmission, fix it up, have it back on the road. It was really good. And it was interesting covering such a big chunk of the countryside. You really got to see the country. Oh yeah, there's my view from my driver's hole. Most of my pictures are pretty terrible because I was taking them driving, in that, which I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to do. But there we are, out on patrol. That was where I lived. That's my hole. So if you ever spent time on armored crew, what you're always told is get back in your hole, troll. And that's kind of so your perspective is very small. And it was curious this morning then getting to hear some bigger picture perspective. So I really appreciated Commander Flavin's presentation. I really appreciated Sean's presentation. Those were, I feel like, we probably had some awareness of those things going over, but there's so much there that you just, the perspective is lost when your life is that big, right? When your whole world is that big. So, all right. Is that 7 months in a hole like that? Are we okay? Yeah. Claustrophobics in a room? All right. Does not work for claustrophobics. Some countryside photos here. And yeah, just tons of change. So this was pretty typical for us. We'd drive out on patrol. We just did a lot of sort of presence patrolling, dismount, walk around, that kind of thing. All right. So then by 2002, I had joined CIMIC. So I was one of the first to join. Grant McLean, for whatever reason, had taken a shine to me. And I would say, so Mark just talked about the sort of training program that he and Grant put together. I know some folks in the room will know Grant, and he's a little bit of, I think, an unconventional thinker. Is that a fair way to describe him? All right. I'm sure he butted heads here and there with maybe some folks in the room. I don't know. But he was a really good guy for CIMIC. Just because that unconventional thinking, I think, was really useful for preparing us. We were doing an unconventional job, so you needed some of that. Okay? There's some merit there to having folks like that around. So this is my office. I guess that was Christmas. I hope that was Christmas, or else that's really hard to explain. So it was a Christmas tour, so it makes sense. But yeah, I have a few shots of it here. We had sort of a proper office setup and all that. I want to just talk about our training a little bit leading up to it. So we had done this really good training here at Edmonton. It was top-notch, honestly. It was so good, even though it's kind of a blur in my memory now. We did sales training, we did negotiation training, we did alternate dispute resolution, we did project management, we did cross-cultural communications, a lot of stuff that at the time wasn't necessarily part of pre-deployment training. I started to see some of these things sneak into pre-deployment training now. A good example, I think, is cross-cultural communications. I think you'd find more of that done in regular pre-deployment training for folks that went to, I don't know, did you do any of that before Afghanistan? No? It's fair, yeah. I still think it's probably more than it would have been for a soldier deploying in Bosnia in 2002. So and then the other thing we did, and Mark alluded to this briefly, and actually this is something that Jerry talked about in his introductory comments this morning. We went to the Pearson Peacekeeping Center. So some of you may recall that at Cornwallis, which had previously been where all the regular Army soldiers did basic training, so some of you probably have terrible memories of Cornwallis. That's where, when the basic training base shut down and moved to St. Jean, the Army repurposed that base to be Pearson Peacekeeping Center. Anybody else there? Anybody go to Pearson? No, I'm not surprised. So it was really a way to fulfill our NATO commitment. And Wes, do you have any involvement in that at all from your shop in NATO at the time? Yeah, so what was happening here was basically the Canadian Army was running this school, and it was sort of a military-civilian hybrid. And they were running courses like civil affairs / civil military cooperation, disarmament courses, lots of sort of stuff where you'd have folks from the UN or folks from the OSCE or folks from sort of NATO civilian side, and then a real mix of people from all over the world. When I taught my course there, I taught a course after I came back from Bosnia. We had 45 countries represented on the course. It was an amazing experience. And it's since been shut down. So what actually happened is after 2003, the Army shut down Pearson Peacekeeping Center, or sorry, the Army stopped funding it. It did run as a private school for a couple of years, but it didn't really work. And now, if you're, or I guess, yeah, this is still true. Now if you're doing this, you're going to Kingston, to the Peace Support Training Center. I will say that my experience teaching on the course at Kingston really paled in comparison to teaching on the course at Pearson Peacekeeping Center. I think this touches on some of what Mark talked about too, that having that sort of mix, it's literally civil-military cooperation, and having that mix of civilian and military folks on course and a good sort of multinational representation, that really fit well with the overall mission of CIMIC. So, okay. I would love to see what Jerry talked about, to go back to the Pearson Peacekeeping Center. I think that was a really fantastic operation. I learned a lot there, highly formative, just a wonderful experience. On that tour, so what happened on that tour, 0203, it was a mature operation by then. So that was Roto 11. Canada had been in the former Yugoslav republics for more than a decade by then. And when I got there, we were taking over from the 12 RBC battle group from the French Armored Regiment, and just sort of hopped into patrols with the CIMIC officer who was leaving, and it was a seamless handover. He had built really good trust amongst the sort of locals that we had to have relationships with. I always think of CIMIC, when I'm trying to explain it to my civilian friends, it's like a sales rep for the Army. You're kind of just going out and building relationships. And it was, because it was a mature theater and because I wasn't stepping in cold, it was a really good experience. And really within a month or so, I knew the people that I was dealing with, they knew me. I got to benefit from the trust that they had built in previous tours. It was a fantastic operation. And I would actually argue that my 6 months in Bosnia in 2002, 2003 might have been the best 6 months of my life just fantastic. It was an amazing experience. We were well prepared for it, well trained, and the Army really did know how to employ us as well. So I want to just acknowledge a couple of things. We did a ton of information gathering. You saw Mark's comments talked about report writing as a sort of necessary function, and I would go every day and just basically have coffee all day, every day, Bosnian coffee, so my heart was pounding by the end. But I produced, every night I would come home and write somewhere between 6 to 10 pages of written reports. There wasn't much else happening. The sort of safety and security position was pretty good then. So I know that sort of the int guys loved me. The commander had actually something to do because he had these big written reports. So it was nice, and I enjoyed doing it. It was a lot of good information we're bringing back. And I just want to show my team here. So this is me on the right side of the picture. My driver, another reservist, Corporal Sean retired Master Corporal Sean McIntyre. Sean was a welder in civilian life, and therefore could read schematics, which was an incredibly useful skill. Also just a bright guy. He picked up a bunch of the language, just sort of natively, and fantastic guy to have along. Never had to worry about anything. And then our interpreter, Drago, and I can't remember where Drago's from now. He was not from Dervar, where we were. He had to travel for work. But so that was kind of the team, right? And your interpreter was such a big part of it. I picked up a little bit of the language here and there, but not enough to have full-on conversations. So, all right. Switching gears entirely. So I came back from Bosnia, and about 9 months later is when Haiti brewed up. So you may recall in February of 2004, there was a UN resolution. Back to Commander Flavin's presentation this morning. There was a UN resolution to establish a safe and secure environment in Haiti. And we deployed on virtually no notice. Basically what happened is, again, there'll be some others who know more about this than I do in the room, but the Americans and I think our JTF sort of cooperated to go in and remove a democratically elected leader, and then we swooped in afterwards, and I actually was part of the advance party, so we slept on the floor of the Canadian Embassy for a week, and then we had no pre-training or anything like that. We just went, and with 2RCR. So this operation was a whole different beast. So I said when I went into Bosnia, I had a handover, a fantastic handover from somebody who had developed relationships, somebody that allowed me to actually do the job. And here, we were really coming in absolutely cold. So anything that happened here was stuff that we built. And there was quite a bit of challenge with this, honestly. There was a really well-developed sort of civilian community of non-governmental organizations, and they didn't, I think, attach very well to the idea of us being there. I don't think they were a big fan of folks in uniform in general. And honestly, if I had, if I look at what's happened in Haiti and kind of the American experience there, I can agree with them. I can see with their perspective. So it was a really difficult place to establish operations. And then I think our commander didn't really understand how to use us. Our commander was sort of a hard charger. He had just come out of JTF2. Great guy, but I just don't think he had a sort of concept of how to use CIMIC. So this is something that, papers like what you two just exchanged, that kind of thing becomes so useful, but there was just nothing there. We did a couple of projects, and even the projects were a little shaky. So basically we had some CETA money that we had access to, sort of had a mandate to use, and it was a difficult place to do projects responsibly. Just as an example, you can really sway the local economy quite a bit. So there was a garbage problem in Port-au-Prince. I don't know if anybody been to Port-au-Prince? Not my #1 tourist spot. If you're going to go, you go to the other side of the island. In Port-au-Prince, there's really no effective garbage collection, and I can't imagine it's gotten any better. Basically, what happens here is it's a very mountainous country, so the whole city is sort of built on a slope, and you just put your garbage out, and then when it rains, the rain washes your garbage down into the Caribbean. Good? That's garbage collection in Haiti. So, and the problem is that there's actually about maybe on the, on like this coast of Port-au-Prince, there's actually a chunk of it that's below sea level. So that garbage actually doesn't wash out to sea, or the rain has to be really, really heavy to wash it out to sea. So we tried to do a project to clear some of that out, and we found that things like having to responsibly rent front-end loaders to clear out the garbage, the pricing, as soon as they found out you're Canadians, they jack up the price, and you're like, well, we can afford it, and then the issue is the locals can't afford it because you've driven up the price. So things like this that you don't think about before you start doing that work, but you're not sort of paying market price for everything. So on the whole, my deployment, I said Bosnia was so great, I had such a great experience there, and Haiti was just the opposite. It was not a good deployment. I didn't feel well prepared for it. We were not well utilized, didn't really accomplish much, kind of a frustrating waste of time, which I know happens in the Army, that's going to be the case. But there were some, I think, logical reasons for it, and I think that the way that the West has sort of done deployments in Haiti is a big part of that. They have a problem, you go in for 3 months, 6 months, 3 years, whatever it is, and then you leave. And I want to contrast that with Bosnia, where in Bosnia, we saw it in the presentations today, where really we're sort of on to like almost our 3rd generation of soldiers in Bosnia, and I think Bosnia has been a lot more effective. All the mandatory tourist shots. It's funny because it's like you're not that far from the United States, not that far from Canada, right? So you see Texaco and brand names like that, and Scotiabank was big in Port-au-Prince at the time. All the banks were Scotiabank, so it's always kind of funny. I lived on the airfield for most of my time there, and you watch the Air Canada flight land twice a week. All right. So I have sort of 3 themes here, and then I'll wrap up, Dave, sorry. So that peace support operations are only effective when we're there for at least a generation. This idea of going in for 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is, just a mess. And I know in Bosnia we didn't necessarily think about it that way when we were first there. That's accurate, Sean. That was a Band-Aid at first too, wasn't it? However, turned into this multi-generational commitment. I'd really like to think about that as sort of the framework for deployments like that. I think that to some extent CIMIC success is a good proxy for sort of the success of a peace support operation. That is, if you have an operation where CIMIC goes in and does good projects safely, and we see an actual impact from those projects, that's probably a pretty good indicator that things are working as they're intended to work. So I really think, Haiti, we didn't do a lot of good, may have done more harm than good. Bosnia, the projects we did and the impact we had was tangible. There was stuff that I'm sure I could go back today and still see projects that I had a hand in 20 years ago. And that when it's an unconventional job like this, something that the Army doesn't necessarily do all the time, that your training should be unconventional. That having, Mark come in and just kind of interview people with a fairly loose mandate and develop this training plan, that's effective. That's, you have an unusual mission, you're going to have unusual training. Thanks very much. Thanks for the opportunity, too, today. Appreciate your attention.